Have you ever seen a hero admit he's at his breaking point? Not in front of the cameras, but in a quiet room, surrounded by his most trusted confidants? Imagine Michael Jordan at 62 years old, his shoulders no longer hunched by the weight of the game, but by something far greater, the responsibility of keeping alive the hope of thousands of young people. And then, at the zenith of pressure, he utters the words no one would ever expect. I can't do this anymore. What was the import of those words? Had Michael Jordan given up? Or was he on the verge of revealing the greatest secret of his life? Brace yourself for a glimpse behind the curtain of a night that began as a collapse and culminated in the dawn of a global revolution. Because what Michael had safeguarded in that locked room for 3 months could alter the destiny of thousands of children worldwide, and you're about to discover why. The digital clock on the wall of the Jordan Brand training facility read 2 o'clock in the morning when Michael Jordan pressed his palms against his temples, trying to alleviate the throbbing headache that had pulsed for 3 consecutive days. At 62 years old, the man once deemed invincible on the courts now faced his most formidable battle, surrounded by a dozen individuals who placed all their hopes on him to salvage something far greater than titles or records. The complex's main hall had transformed into a veritable war zone against time, with makeshift tables laden with financial spreadsheets, open laptops displaying ominous red graphs, and burgeoning piles of documents that seemed to multiply by the hour. Marcus Thompson, a former Chicago Bulls teammate, was hunched over a calculator, his grizzled hair disheveled as he mumbled figures that never seemed to coalesce into a sufficient sum. Sarah Rodriguez, the sports physical therapist who oversaw the rehabilitation programs, paced the room, phone pressed to her ear, attempting to sway reluctant investors to consider an emergency meeting. David Kang, who had foregone his career as a collegiate coach to dedicate himself to the underprivileged youth served by the foundation, was frantically typing on his computer, dispatching messages to former students who now held significant positions in the corporate world. Lisa Patterson, the administrative coordinator who knew the foundation's every figure intimately, was meticulously organizing and reorganizing documents in a desperate bid to unearth some loophole, some forgotten reserve that might buy them more time. The other 8 team members moved about the room like soldiers in a trench, each fulfilling their role in the silent battle against imminent bankruptcy. Michael, I've managed to connect with 3 investors from Atlanta, but they're demanding assurances we cannot provide, Sarah stated, hanging up the phone with a heavy sigh that reverberated through the hushed room. What about the sponsorship contracts that were under negotiation? Marcus queried, lifting his bloodshot, weary eyes from the spreadsheets he had been poring over for hours. Jordan walked to the window overlooking the empty parking lot, his back stooped under the immense burden of a responsibility that seemed to compound with every passing minute. His navy polo shirt, usually pristine, was creased and coffee-stained, betraying the toll of 72 uninterrupted hours of work. The shoulders that had once hoisted 6 National Basketball League titles now trembled subtly under the burden of a far heavier load. The future of 3,000 young individuals reliant on the 15 training centers dispersed throughout the region's most underprivileged communities. David rose from his chair, approached Jordan, and placed a hand on his shoulder, sensing the palpable strain in his contracted musculature. Lisa continued to crunch numbers on her calculator, the figures blurring before her weary eyes as she attempted to devise a combination that would yield the $50 million required to sustain the programs. The other team members remained at their stations, some on the phone whispering desperate negotiations, others typing up proposals they knew stood little likelihood of being approved. The atmosphere was charged with a palpable tension, the sort of high-stakes intensity Jordan was intimately familiar with from championship finals, but this time, no last-second three-point shot could salvage the situation. David, how much time do you think we can buy if we curtail the weekend programs? Jordan asked without turning from the window, his voice raspy from 3 nights of scant sleep. Perhaps 6 weeks, 2 months at most. But Michael, you know what that means for these children, David replied, his voice heavy with a sadness that resonated throughout the room. The stark reality of the figures was laid bare across the room like an unsolvable jigsaw puzzle. Lisa had calculated and recalculated countless times, The Jordan Foundation urgently required $50 million to keep its 15 training centers operational for the next 2 years. Each center catered to an average of 200 young individuals, offering not only sports training, but also educational support, nutritious meals, and, most importantly, the promise of a brighter future. Marcus was personally acquainted with many of the beneficiary families. Some mothers juggled 2 jobs to ensure their children could attend the centers, while fathers viewed the programs as the sole avenue for their children to avoid the perils of the streets. Sarah's thoughts drifted to the young athletes she had aided in their rehabilitation from injuries, many of whom were now attending universities on athletic scholarships they would never have attained without the foundation's backing. David recalled the hopeful faces that greeted him every morning, youngsters who would arrive at the centers even before they opened their doors, keen to embark on another day of rigorous training. The other team members, each a specialist in their respective field, knew they were battling against far more than just red figures on spreadsheets. They were combating the prospect of letting down thousands of families who had placed their trust in the Jordan brand. If we shutter the Norfolk and Richmond centers, we could save $300,000 monthly, Lisa suggested, though her own voice betrayed her understanding that this was merely deferring the inevitable. "We cannot do that, Lisa. These communities are the ones most in need of our support," Sarah retorted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The computers remained open, their screens illuminating faces that were simultaneously weary and hopeful. Marcus had contacted every former player he knew, from former teammates to respected adversaries, requesting not personal favors, but investments in a brighter future for young individuals who deserved the same opportunities they once had. Sarah leveraged her international network of contacts in sports medicine, attempting to persuade clinics and hospitals to sponsor the rehabilitation programs that had transformed so many lives. David drafted emails to universities, proposing partnerships that could yield financial resources in exchange for access to the burgeoning young talent discovered at the centers. Lisa meticulously coordinated this flurry of activity, organizing meetings, preparing presentations, and keeping everyone apprised of every call, every email, every fleeting glimmer of hope that emerged and often swiftly vanished. Jordan moved among them like a general inspecting his troops, pausing to hear updates, offering words of encouragement, and, when necessary, personally interceding on calls that had proven intractable for others. The training center, which during the day hummed with energy and activity, now had the somber air of a hospital where all efforts were directed at resuscitating a precious entity slowly succumbing. "Michael, I've received a response from the Carter Foundation. They might consider a $5 million donation, but they're demanding a full audit and management restructuring," David reported, reading aloud from an email he had just received. $5 million is a paltry sum, and they know it. It's as if they're offering us mere crumbs, Jordan retorted, finally turning away from the window and walking towards the center of the room. Jordan's hands trembled slightly as he picked up one of the spreadsheets from the table. Not from fear, but from the profound physical and emotional exhaustion that had accumulated over the past 3 days. He had faced the most intense pressures of professional sports, played decisive finals before millions of viewers, yet he had never felt a burden as crushing as the one he bore at that moment. Every single number on the spreadsheet represented a child, a family, a narrative of resilience that could be brutally curtailed if they failed to secure a solution. Marcus watched Jordan with concern, recalling the most arduous moments they had shared on the courts, yet acknowledging that this time the challenge dwarfed anything they had encountered as athletes. Sarah continued to make calls, her voice maintaining a professional tone, even as she encountered yet another refusal, another polite evasion, another vague assurance of future consideration. David typed relentlessly, his experience as an educator constantly reminding him of the countless young talents who would be lost if the programs were to be discontinued. Lisa organized documents with the meticulousness of someone who understood that every single detail could tip the scales between the mission's success and its failure. The other team members maintained their positions, each contributing their specialized expertise, all united by the seemingly impossible objective of raising $50 million in record time. Patterson Enterprises has offered $10 million, but they're demanding exclusive image rights for the centers for the next 5 years, Lisa stated, presenting a contract she had just printed. 10 million won't even address 20% of the problem, and 5 years of exclusivity means ceding control over our very mission, Marcus remarked, shaking his head in negation. Jordan stood still in the center of the room, enveloped by computers, stacks of paper, calculators, and individuals who had dedicated their lives to a cause far greater than themselves. The overhead fluorescent lighting cast deep shadows across his weary face, accentuating the lines of exhaustion that had deepened considerably over the past 3 days. He surveyed the room, observing David with bloodshot eyes glued to the computer screen, Sarah massaging her temples in an attempt to stave off a burgeoning headache, Marcus scribbling figures on a notepad as if sheer willpower could somehow bend the numbers to their will, Lisa meticulously sorting and resorting the same documents, a tangible manifestation of her escalating anxiety. The other 8 team members were equally spent, yet none had suggested a respite, none had voiced a complaint about the protracted hours, and none had evinced any intention of yielding. They were present not merely as employees, but as soldiers in a relentless battle against social injustice, striving to keep alive the flickering hope of thousands of young people who remained blissfully unaware that their futures were being shaped in that cold, silent room. Jordan felt a confluence of pride and despair. Pride at being surrounded by such unwavering dedication. Despair at his inability to devise a solution commensurate with their loyalty. "Sarah, how many calls did you make today?" Jordan asked, his voice subdued. 43. I secured tentative pledges from 6 investors, but nothing substantive. Nothing that truly addresses our predicament, she replied, her frustration palpable in every utterance. The 72 hours of uninterrupted work were beginning to take their toll, not merely physically, but emotionally. Jordan saw in the face of each person in the room the mirrored reflection of his own profound exhaustion, yet also an unyielding resolve that reminded him why he had chosen to align himself with them. Marcus had sacrificed a lucrative position as a sports commentator to devote himself entirely to the Foundation's cause, driven by the indelible memory of his own arduous youth and a profound gratitude for someone who had believed in him when he needed it most. Sarah had spurned lucrative offers from prestigious private clinics to work with underprivileged young athletes, motivated by the conviction that talent and tenacity should not be squandered due to a dearth of opportunities. David had foregone a stable academic career to immerse himself in social work, convinced that education through sport held the power to revitalize entire communities. Lisa forwent a substantially higher corporate salary to manage the finances of a nonprofit organization, inspired by the idea that well-managed resources could amplify social impact. Each of these individuals had made significant personal sacrifices to be there, and Jordan felt the profound weight of the trust placed in him. They weren't merely trying to salvage a foundation, they were striving to preserve the dream that it is possible to make a tangible difference in the lives of those most in need. "David, have you heard back from Duke University regarding the partnership?" Jordan inquired, striving to maintain focus on practical solutions. "They're interested, but the approval process could take 6 months. We don't have that kind of time," David replied, frustration palpable in his weary voice. Jordan felt his legs buckle slightly as the full gravity of the situation fully dawned on him. He braced himself against one of the tables, his trembling hands leaving damp imprints on the wooden surface. For 3 days he had maintained a facade of unwavering confidence, assuring his team that a solution would be unearthed, that they would not forsake the children who depended on them, that the Jordan Foundation would continue to be a beacon of hope for underserved communities. But now, surrounded by irrefutable mathematical evidence that a financial miracle was their only recourse, Jordan tasted, for the first time in decades, the bitter tang of impending defeat. It wasn't the defeat of a game or a season, it was the shattering of dreams, of future, of hope itself. Marcus discerned the subtle shift in Jordan's posture and moved closer, recognizing the telltale signs of a man pushed to the brink of his endurance. Sarah ceased her phone conversation and glanced towards Jordan, her maternal instincts alerting her that the atmosphere in the room was subtly shifting. David saved the document he was working on and turned to observe Jordan, his pedagogical acumen prompting him to sense that a pivotal juncture was imminent. Lisa interrupted her meticulous filing and fixed her gaze on Jordan, her administrative intuition signaling that a significant decision was on the verge of being rendered. The other team members gradually ceased their activities and converged their attention on the center of the room, where Jordan remained motionless, encircled by the structured disarray of 3 days of frantic endeavor. "Everyone, we need to be realistic about our situation," Jordan began, his voice betraying the emotion he struggled to contain. "Michael, we still have some options we haven't fully explored," Marcus interjected, attempting to inject a measure of optimism into a moment that seemed utterly lost. Jordan lifted his gaze, scanning the room once more, imprinting on his memory the faces of those who had placed their trust in him, who had dedicated years of their lives to a cause that now appeared unsustainable. He thought of the 3,000 children who arrived daily at the 15 training centers, their worn backpacks holding immense dreams, trusting that there would always be a safe haven for them to hone their talents and build a brighter future. He thought of the mothers who worked double shifts to afford the transportation that brought their children to the centers, of the families who saw in the Foundation's programs the sole genuine hope for transforming their lives. He thought of the young people he had personally encountered over the years, many of whom now attended prestigious universities or had secured employment that had lifted their families out of poverty. A knot tightened in Jordan's throat as he realized this might be the last time he would be in that room, advocating for this cause, the last opportunity he would have to make a tangible difference in the lives of so many he didn't even know personally, yet who constituted a fundamental part of his legacy as a human being. The pressure on his shoulders intensified, his hands trembled more visibly, and for a moment that stretched into an eternity, Michael Jordan, the man who had never given up on anything in his life, felt utterly lost and without recourse. "I can't do this anymore," Jordan said, his voice cracking in the absolute silence of the room. The impact of those words was immediate and devastating. Marcus dropped the pen he was holding. Sarah disconnected her call without a farewell. David abruptly slammed shut his laptop, and Lisa, releasing the papers she had been organizing, watched them scatter across the floor. All were paralyzed, processing what they had just heard, the words none of them had ever imagined Michael Jordan capable of uttering. Words that signified the culmination of everything they had fought for, the abandonment of thousands of young people who depended on them, the undoing of years of dedicated work, and the betrayal of his very life's mission. Jordan instantly grasped the profound misunderstanding his words had engendered and raised his right hand, gesturing for silence before anyone could utter a sound. His eyes, weariness notwithstanding, gleamed with an uncharacteristic intensity, as if something far more profound was on the verge of being disclosed. Marcus stepped forward, poised to argue against any decision to abandon their efforts, but was halted by Jordan's resolute gesture. Sarah still clutched her now silent phone, her gaze fixed on the man who had transformed her life, and who now seemed to be dismantling everything they had painstakingly built together. David remained with his hands resting on his closed laptop, struggling to process whether he had truly heard those impossible words emanate from his mentor's lips. Lisa crouched to retrieve the strewn documents, more from nervous compulsion than actual necessity, her hands trembling as she rearranged papers she had already organized countless times. The other team members remained frozen in their positions, like statues suspended in time, awaiting an explanation that would make sense of what they had just witnessed. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the low hum of the computers and the subdued whir of the air conditioning unit. Working tirelessly to maintain a comfortable temperature in an environment that had become suffocating with emotional tension. "You've misunderstood my intention. I can no longer proceed solo. I cannot carry this burden of a secret any longer without your help," Jordan asserted, his voice gaining both strength and resolve. "What secret, Michael?" "What are you referring to?" Marcus queried, his bewilderment palpable as he attempted to decipher the enigma Jordan had just presented. Jordan strode towards a side door in the room that always remained locked, an area no team member had ventured into during the preceding 3 months. He produced a key from the pocket of his worn denim jeans and inserted it into the lock with deliberate movements, as if he were about to unlock not merely a door, but an entirely new chapter of their lives. The door creaked open softly, revealing a smaller room that had been transformed into what appeared to be a military command center, fused with a medical research laboratory. The walls were adorned with printouts of scientific articles, medical charts, photographs of children, world maps meticulously dotted with colorful pins, and an elaborate timeline spanning 3 meters of wall. Two tables groaned under the weight of sports medicine textbooks, hospital reports, international correspondence, and a computer that had evidently been heavily utilized. Marcus was the first to enter, his eyes sweeping the room as he endeavored to grasp the clandestine nature of Jordan's work. Sarah followed, her medical acumen instantly identifying terminology and diagrams related to uncommon conditions afflicting young athletes. David and Lisa entered together, gazing in astonishment at the painstaking organization that bespoke months of devoted research. The other team members clustered at the entrance, striving to assimilate the sheer scope of what they were seeing. "Jordan, how long have you been working on this?" Sarah asked, approaching a wall covered with photographs of children from different countries. "3 months, since the day I received a call that fundamentally altered my perception of our mission here," Jordan replied, moving towards the central computer. Jordan moved the mouse and the computer screen sprang to life, displaying an intricate presentation titled Exercise-Induced Hemolysis Syndrome, a Global Treatment Project. The first slide showed disquieting figures about a disease afflicting one in every 100,000 young athletes globally, with mortality rates soaring to 80% if left untreated. Marcus read the numbers aloud, his background as a professional athlete affording him immediate comprehension of the direness of the predicament. Sarah approached the screen, her sports physiotherapy background facilitating her understanding of the technical intricacies of the medical condition Jordan had been obsessively researching. David scrutinized the photographs of young athletes from different continents, many of them wearing uniforms he recognized from athletic programs akin to those run by the Jordan Foundation. Lisa retrieved a folder labeled International Treatment Costs and began to peruse documents containing itemized budgets from Swiss, German, and Japanese hospitals. Jordan advanced to the next slide of the presentation, revealing the specific case that had motivated all that clandestine research. Kevin Williams, 12 years old, diagnosed with the syndrome 3 months prior, regarded as the most promising young talent in the Chicago program, and a boy who had deeply resonated with Jordan during an encounter 2 years before. Kevin's photo on the screen depicted a smiling boy holding a basketball, his eyes gleaming with the same kind of resolve Jordan recognized in himself during his youth. "Kevin Williams. I recall him. He's the boy who challenged you to that one-on-one during our Chicago visit," Marcus stated, his memory jogged by the familiar photograph. "Precisely, and now he could die if he continues playing basketball. But without the sport, he has no prospect of escaping poverty," Jordan responded, his voice laden with suppressed emotion. Jordan clicked to open an audio recording stored on the computer, and the room fell into absolute silence as the voice of Maria Santos, the Chicago program coordinator, reverberated through the speakers. The telephone call recording had been made 3 months prior, and every word was imbued with urgency and despair. Maria elucidated Kevin's diagnosis in detail, describing how the boy had collapsed during a routine practice session and how subsequent examinations revealed a condition that could prove fatal if he continued engaging in any intense physical activity. Her voice quivered as she recounted how Kevin had wept upon learning he might never play basketball again, how he had inquired if he could still meet Michael Jordan in person, how his mother had worked triple shifts attempting to cover medical examinations the family could not afford. Sarah covered her mouth with her hands as she heard Maria explain that Kevin kept an autographed photo of Jordan on his nightstand beside his bed, gazing at it every night before sleep and whispering vows that he would one day play in the National Basketball Association. Marcus clenched his fists as Maria described how Kevin was regarded as a natural leader among the other children in the program, always encouraging the younger ones, sharing his meals with those less fortunate, organizing impromptu games during breaks from official practices. Tears welled up in David's eyes as he listened to Kevin recount his collegiate dreams, how he pursued mathematics and science with the same fervor he dedicated to his training, convinced that the synergy of academic prowess and athletic achievement would pave his way to a brighter future. "Maria, what exactly is the prognosis? Is a complete recovery possible?" Jordan's voice, betraying paternal concern, asked on the recording. Dr. Martinez stated that without appropriate treatment, Kevin has a maximum of 2 years. With the experimental treatment from Switzerland, he could lead a normal life. But the cost? Michael, it's $2 million, Maria responded, her voice audibly cracking. Jordan halted the recording and turned to face his team, who now grasped why he had spent 3 months toiling in secret within that room. He explained how, after receiving Maria's call, he had embarked on an obsessive research endeavor into exercise-induced hemolysis syndrome, uncovering that hundreds of young athletes worldwide were afflicted by the same condition. Sarah escorted Jordan to a wall adorned with world maps, where crimson pins denoted locations of confirmed disease cases, azure pins signified available treatment centers, and amber pins symbolized youths who had perished due to lack of access to proper treatment. Marcus scrutinized a meticulous table that delineated treatment costs in different countries. $2 million in Switzerland, $1,800,000 in Japan, $2,300,000 in Germany. All figures that vastly exceeded the financial means of the family served by the Jordan Foundation. David perused a dossier compiling personal narratives of young athletes from 5 continents, each revealing squandered talents, shattered aspirations, and families ravaged by the cruel synergy of poverty and rare disease. Lisa examined spreadsheets Jordan had created, calculating the financial ramifications of treating not just Kevin, but all documented cases of the syndrome. Figures that escalated into the hundreds of millions of dollars and elucidated why merely 5 children annually gained access to the experimental treatment. Do you comprehend the gravity of this? We are not merely discussing Kevin. We are addressing a silent epidemic that is claiming young talents globally, Jordan stated, gesturing towards the maps on the wall. And you unearthed all of this single-handedly, toiling here every night after we left? Sarah asked, her admiration commingled with concern for Jordan's mental well-being. Jordan explained how he had cultivated a clandestine routine over the past 3 months. During the day, he participated in meetings concerning the foundation's financial crisis, maintaining a facade of normalcy while internally processing the devastating revelation about Kevin and hundreds of other children. Night after night, after his team had departed, he would return to the training facility and seclude himself in that room, poring over medical studies, contacting international hospitals, examining treatment protocols, and meticulously calculating costs. Marcus listened with mounting astonishment as Jordan had secretly communicated with researchers across 3 continents, how he had consulted specialists in pediatric sports medicine, how he had even contemplated liquidating his stake in the Charlotte Hornets to finance Kevin's treatment. Sarah escorted Jordan to a bookshelf laden with technical volumes on hematology, pediatric cardiology, and sports medicine, publications he had delved into with the same fierce dedication he once applied to basketball. David scrutinized a meticulous timeline affixed to the wall, detailing the month-by-month progression of Kevin's illness, including medical examinations, specialist consultations, and the gradual deterioration of his condition. Lisa uncovered a folder containing correspondence with Jordan's personal bank, documents that divulged how he had been discreetly divesting personal investments to amass the $2 million required for Kevin's treatment. The other team members circulated through the room like detectives, uncovering clues to a mystery that was finally unraveling, comprehending why Jordan had seemed so withdrawn and preoccupied in recent weeks. You were planning to fund Kevin's treatment entirely from your own resources? Michael, why didn't you confide in us? Marcus queried, his voice betraying a blend of admiration and exasperation. Because I knew you would do exactly what you're doing now. Attempt to persuade me to prioritize the foundation and defer Kevin's treatment. But I cannot do that, Jordan responded resolutely. Jordan moved toward a table strewn with printed photographs, selecting a particular image that had been enlarged and framed. The photograph depicted him and Kevin during their visit to the Chicago Center 2 years prior. Both clutching a basketball, Jordan crouched to meet the boy at eye level, both smiling unreservedly for the camera. He recounted to the team how he vividly recalled that day, how Kevin had approached him with remarkable self-assurance for a 10-year-old, how he had challenged none other than Michael Jordan himself to an impromptu one-on-one game on the center's court. Marcus smiled as he listened to Jordan recount how Kevin had dribbled through his legs, how he had attempted feats of dunking beyond what his height suggested, and how he had discussed game strategies with a maturity that astounded even seasoned adult coaches. Sarah listened, captivated as Jordan described how Kevin had inquired about the winning mindset, how to overcome defeats, and how to maintain focus during moments of pressure. Questions that revealed an insatiable hunger for knowledge that transcended the bounds of the sport itself. David's attention was particularly drawn as Jordan disclosed how Kevin had spoken about his educational aspirations, how he intended to pursue engineering while simultaneously playing basketball, and how he envisioned constructing sports facilities within his own community upon reaching adulthood. Lisa noted the burgeoning emotion in Jordan's expression as he described how Kevin had pledged to exert twice the effort of any other boy to merit a chance at success, and how he had vowed never to let down those who placed their faith in him. It was now clear to everyone in the room that that two-year-old encounter had forged a profound connection between Jordan and Kevin, a personal responsibility that transcended any professional or philanthropic obligation. Kevin looked me in the eye that day and declared he would one day play in the National Basketball Association to demonstrate to other children that dreams are attainable, Jordan recalled, his voice thick with emotion. And now you feel you failed him. That's why you can't do this anymore. Alone, David concluded, finally grasping the true import of Jordan's words. Jordan extracted a set of meticulously prepared documents from a desk drawer, a detailed plan to divest himself of all his personal assets, including homes, collector cars, stock investments, and even his stake in the Charlotte Hornets. Sarah flipped through the documents, her incredulity mounting, perceiving that Jordan had precisely calculated the exact sum he could amass by divesting himself of every single possession. Marcus pored over a spreadsheet detailing how Jordan could underwrite the treatment not only for Kevin, but also for a minimum of 15 other children worldwide diagnosed with the identical syndrome. David scrutinized partnership proposals Jordan had drafted with universities specializing in sports medicine, outlining plans to establish a perpetual treatment endowment that could assist hundreds of young athletes annually. Lisa meticulously examined financial computations, demonstrating how Jordan could transmute his personal fortune into a self-sustaining system of medical aid for underprivileged athletes, a legacy poised to endure for decades beyond his demise. The other team members milled around the room, each piecing together clues that unveiled not only Jordan's extraordinary magnanimity, but also his profound vision for transforming a personal tragedy into a revolution in pediatric sports medicine. Jordan elaborated on how he had burned the midnight oil modeling various contingencies, researching legal precedents, consulting counsel on the structuring of international endowments, and studying paradigms from other thriving medical foundations. Michael, this is sheer madness. You cannot divest yourself of your entire estate for the sake of one child, Lisa protested, though her very tone evinced her understanding of why he would contemplate such a radical course of action. It's not for one child, Lisa. It's for 500 children like Kevin, scattered across the globe. It's for all those who will follow, Jordan responded, gesturing towards the map studded with red pins. Jordan strode to the center of the clandestine chamber and positioned himself before a presentation he had meticulously crafted over the past 3 months, a proposition he knew would strike any rational individual as utterly preposterous. His hands, which had trembled with exhaustion mere moments prior, now moved with purpose and unwavering resolve as he accessed a file on the computer titled Project Improbable, Global Center for Pediatric Sports Medicine. The inaugural image on the screen depicted a futuristic architectural complex, a hospital seamlessly integrating cutting-edge medical technology with groundbreaking athletic facilities, designed to specifically address rare conditions in young athletes, such as exercise-induced hemolysis syndrome. Marcus gravitated toward the screen, his gaze perusing the project's intricacies as he endeavored to fully comprehend the sheer magnitude of the vision Jordan had cultivated in clandestine fashion. Sarah studied the medical schematics integrated into the complex, recognizing state-of-the-art equipment she had only encountered in elite university hospitals. David analyzed the specifications for the rehabilitation courts, therapeutic pools, and motion analysis labs that would be part of the structure. Lisa leafed through a folder labeled Total Budget $200 million, her eyes widening with each page she turned. The other team members positioned themselves around the presentation, each grappling with how Jordan had developed such a detailed and ambitious proposal when they had all assumed he was merely attempting to salvage the current foundation. "Jordan, are you serious? $200 million to build a hospital? That's 10 times the money we need to save the foundation," Marcus said, his voice a mixture of incredulity and awe. "Exactly, Marcus. Why merely preserve our modest foundation when we can establish something that will forever revolutionize the treatment of young athletes worldwide?" Jordan responded, advancing to the next slide of the presentation. Jordan clicked on a section of the presentation that displayed devastating statistics on child mortality related to rare medical conditions in young athletes, figures he had compiled from healthcare organizations across 6 different continents. The screen revealed that over 500 children like Kevin Williams were dispersed globally, all confronting the same impossible choice: to continue pursuing sports and risk their lives, or to abandon their athletic aspirations for survival. Sarah read aloud the data on countries where even basic protocols for diagnosing exercise-induced hemolysis syndrome were non-existent, places where young talents perished without ever knowing they suffered from a treatable condition. David pointed to a table that showed how only 5% of globally diagnosed cases had access to experimental treatment, a statistic that implied hundreds of Kevins perished annually due to a lack of financial resources. Marcus scrutinized a temporal graph that projected how the disease's incidence was increasing proportionally to the growth of youth participation in competitive sports, a trend that suggested the problem would become even more critical in the coming years. Lisa meticulously scrutinized spreadsheets delineating current treatment costs across various countries, figures ranging from $1,800,000 to $2.5 million per patient, sums that inherently precluded 99% of families requiring assistance. Jordan expounded upon his discovery that the exorbitant cost of treatment was not attributable to medical complexity, but rather to the scarcity of specialized centers and the absence of standardized protocols, which could render treatment more accessible and efficacious. Do you grasp the true import of these figures? We are allowing children to perish not because we lack the knowledge to save them, but because we lack the requisite infrastructure to make treatment attainable, Jordan asserted, his fervor intensifying with each utterance. "But Michael, commendable though your vision may be, $200 million is an astronomical sum. How do you propose to procure such capital?" Lisa inquired, endeavoring to inject pragmatism into the visionary discourse. Jordan turned towards a wall where he had affixed dozens of business cards, letters of recommendation, and partnership proposals which he had amassed during his 3 months of clandestine research. He elaborated on how he had discreetly contacted some of the world's most eminent physicians in pediatric sports medicine, discovering that many of them shared his exasperation regarding the dearth of resources to treat underprivileged young athletes. Sarah perused a letter from Dr. Hans Muller, director of the Swiss Institute of Sports Medicine, expressing interest in collaborating on any endeavor that could democratize access to the treatment for hemolysis syndrome. Marcus reviewed a proposal from Johns Hopkins Hospital offering a complete transfer of technology and personnel training in exchange for participation in the groundbreaking project. David scrutinized correspondence from European and Asian universities, prepared to contribute to research and development should the center materialize. Lisa pored over letters from philanthropic investors Jordan had contacted, individuals amenable to considering partial funding for a project poised to generate global medical impact. Jordan disclosed how he had ascertained that there was genuine international interest in establishing a world-renowned reference center for pediatric sports medicine, but that no one had possessed the audacity or the resources to spearhead an undertaking of such magnitude. He unveiled feasibility studies he had secretly commissioned, reports confirming that a center like the one he proposed could revolutionize the treatment of various rare conditions affecting young athletes, not merely hemolysis syndrome. "You contacted all these people without telling us?" "Michael, this project extends far beyond our current capacity as a foundation," David observed, struck by the breadth of the network Jordan had cultivated. "David, that's precisely why we need to stop thinking small. Our current foundation saves a few hundred children a year. This center could save thousands," Jordan replied, opening a new section of the presentation. The next segment of Jordan's presentation revealed detailed architectural blueprints for the complex, which he had commissioned from one of the most respected medical architecture firms in the world. The proposed center would include not only a 50-bed hospital specializing in pediatric sports medicine, but also state-of-the-art research laboratories, rehabilitation centers featuring world-exclusive equipment, sports courts adapted for therapy, pools with variable resistance technology, and even dormitories for families requiring on-site accommodation during extended treatments. Sarah meticulously examined the medical laboratory diagrams, recognizing individual pieces of equipment costing millions of dollars that would enable diagnoses and treatments impossible in most conventional hospitals. Marcus scrutinized the specifications for the sports facilities, noting how they had been designed not merely for rehabilitation, but also to allow young athletes to maintain their physical conditioning throughout medical treatment. David reviewed the educational plans integrated into the complex, programs that would enable patients to continue their studies while undergoing treatment, ensuring they wouldn't forfeit academic opportunities during the recovery process. Lisa mentally calculated the annual operational costs of a structure of such magnitude, figures that could easily reach $50 million annually just to keep the center operational. Jordan elaborated on how he had consulted international hospital management experts, uncovering that a center of this nature could achieve financial sustainability through a synergistic blend of philanthropic contributions, governmental partnerships, sponsored research programs, and even private patient treatments that would subsidize complementary care for underprivileged families. This complex is truly impressive, Michael, but do you genuinely believe we can bring something of this magnitude to fruition? We're discussing one of the most cutting-edge hospitals globally, Sarah questioned, her medical expertise allowing her to grasp both the immense potential and formidable challenges of the endeavor. Sarah, if we don't dare to pursue the seemingly impossible, then we will continue to salvage but a handful of children while hundreds perish. I can no longer endure this reality, Jordan responded, his unwavering resolve palpable in every syllable. Jordan opened a section of the presentation that illustrated how the center could serve as a global paradigm, with treatment protocols that would be disseminated freely to hospitals worldwide, training initiatives for physicians from developing nations, and even mobile units capable of delivering essential care to underserved remote regions. Marcus read about plans to create an international consortium of affiliated smaller centers, each specializing in a particular condition prevalent among young athletes, all interconnected via telemedicine technology, facilitating remote consultations and diagnoses. Sarah delved into groundbreaking medical protocols that Jordan had helped develop in collaboration with international researchers, treatments integrating gene therapy, regenerative medicine, and specialized physical conditioning. David analyzed educational curricula to be offered through the center, not only for patients but for coaches, physical educators, and healthcare professionals who work with young athletes. Lisa examined financial models illustrating how the center could ultimately become self-sustaining and even generate capital to expand its operations to other continents. Jordan revealed that he had spent countless nights poring over case studies of successful specialized hospitals worldwide, identifying best practices that could be adapted and enhanced to forge something truly unique and highly efficacious. He displayed letters from international health organizations expressing interest in officially endorsing the project, should it materialize, accolades that would instantly establish the center as a global benchmark. Jordan, you're positing the creation of what would literally be the world's inaugural hospital solely dedicated to young athletes afflicted with rare conditions. This transcends anything previously attempted, David remarked, his voice betraying a blend of admiration and apprehension. Precisely, David, and that is precisely why it will succeed. We are offering something the world desperately needs, yet something no one has dared to attempt, Jordan countered, moving towards the most ambitious segment of his presentation. The concluding segment of Jordan's presentation unveiled the most audacious facet of his proposal. To finance the $200 million required for the center's construction, he was suggesting the liquidation of not only all assets of the Jordan Foundation, but also his own divestment of his controlling stake in the Charlotte Hornets, his personal properties, his collections of automobiles and sports memorabilia, and even the future rights to his image and legacy. Marcus scrutinized a spreadsheet detailing how Jordan had meticulously calculated every cent of his personal fortune, arriving at a net worth figure that would cover approximately 60% of the project's total costs. Sarah reviewed proposals Jordan had drafted to persuade other millionaire former athletes to join the endeavor, forging a consortium of sports luminaries who would transform their personal legacies into a collective legacy of global medical impact. David analyzed fundraising strategies that encompass global crowdfunding campaigns, partnerships with governmental organizations, and even the pioneering of a new category of social investment designed to yield financial returns through the generated social impact. Lisa examined timelines illustrating how the project could be incrementally implemented over 5 years, commencing with a pilot clinic and gradually expanding into the comprehensive complex Jordan envisioned. Jordan elaborated on how he had ascertained that several philanthropic billionaires were actively seeking precisely this type of project to channel their donations. Initiatives that seamlessly combine medical innovation, social impact, and long-term financial sustainability. He presented preliminary correspondence with foundations that indicated a potential to contribute substantial portions of the funding, provided the project demonstrated technical viability and unequivocal leadership commitment. Michael, you are literally proposing that we stake everything, the foundation, your personal fortune, your stake in the team, on a project that could utterly fail, Lisa stated, her financial responsibility compelling her to articulate the patent risks. Lisa, if this project falters, I will die knowing I attempted the impossible to save children like Kevin. If we don't attempt it, I will die knowing I chose a safe path while hundreds of children perished, Jordan countered, his fervor transforming the room's atmosphere. Jordan concluded his presentation and turned to face his team, aware he was on the verge of proposing the most audacious undertaking of his life. He explained that he required an immediate decision. Either they would persist in their attempts to salvage the Jordan Foundation with stopgap measures that would merely offer temporary solutions to its financial woes, or they would embrace a paradigm-shifting vision that could forever transform the medical treatment of underprivileged young athletes worldwide. Marcus regarded Jordan with the intensity of one who recognized a watershed moment, recalling myriad instances when they had confronted insurmountable odds on the courts, and how Jordan's leadership had consistently steered them to victory against all odds. Sarah mused about the hundreds of young athletes she had treated throughout her career, contemplating how many of them might have enjoyed superior recovery prospects had they been afforded access to the caliber of treatment the proposed center would provide. David pondered the educational ramifications of the endeavor, envisioning how integrated health and educational programs could forge a revolutionary paradigm for the cultivation of burgeoning talent in underserved communities. Lisa mentally weighed the risks and opportunities, acknowledging that while the undertaking was fraught with peril, it also presented the potential to forge something genuinely historic and transformative. The other team members remained hushed, grappling with the immense magnitude of the decision they were being called upon to make, comprehending that their ensuing words would delineate not only their own trajectories, but also the fate of thousands of children they had never even met. Jordan awaited his team's response, aware he was asking them to stake their careers, reputations, and financial security on a vision that many would deem unattainable or unhinged. The choice before you is stark. We can persist as a modest foundation, aiding merely a few hundred children, or we can endeavor to become the organization that fundamentally revolutionizes global pediatric sports medicine, Jordan stated, his voice imbued with unwavering resolve. And if we say yes, Jordan? If we acquiesce to this audacious proposition, what precisely is the inaugural step we must undertake? Marcus queried, his queries signaling that he was already seriously contemplating embracing the seemingly impossible endeavor. Marcus Thompson was the first to step forward to face Jordan, his eyes reflecting a resolve that everyone in the room recognized as the same he had displayed during his peak performances on the Chicago Bulls courts. He began to speak with a voice that quavered slightly, not from fear, but from suppressed emotion, as he recounted a little-known story from his youth. Marcus described how, at 17, he had become entangled with hard drugs on the streets of Detroit, forfeiting promising collegiate scholarships and nearly obliterating his prospects for a professional basketball career. He explained how Jordan, still an active player at the time, had learned of his plight through a coach who refused to give up on him, and how Michael himself had personally intervened, enrolling him in a rehabilitation program he personally funded. Sarah listened with rapt attention, realizing Marcus had never divulged these intimate details of his personal history, not even during the years they had collaborated at the foundation. David watched tears welling in Marcus's eyes as he described how Jordan not only funded his drug treatment, but also personally visited him during the most arduous phases of his recovery, offering not just financial backing, but the unwavering presence of someone who believed in his capacity for transformation. Lisa mentally noted Marcus's words, comprehending for the first time the profound personal bonds that interconnected each team member with Jordan and the foundation's mission. Michael, you didn't just salvage my career that day. You saved my entire life. Today I have a wife who loves me, 2 children who look up to me, and a reason to wake up every morning, Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. If you're willing to jeopardize everything for children you don't even know, then I am willing to risk everything for you. My answer is an unequivocal yes, Marcus concluded, extending his hand to Jordan. Sarah Rodriguez stepped forward before Marcus had even fully completed his declaration, her own memories stirred by her colleague's courageous words. She began to recount a story she had held close to her heart for years, how her daughter Isabella had been born with cerebral palsy, a condition doctors initially said would preclude her from walking or engaging in any normal athletic life. Sarah described the devastating early years, when she and her husband expended their entire savings on conventional treatments that yielded minimal results, until they discovered the adaptive sports programs that the Jordan Foundation had begun funding on an experimental basis. She recounted in poignant detail how Isabella, at 8 years old, had taken her first unassisted steps during a hydrotherapy session at the Foundation's Rehabilitation Center, a moment she described as the happiest of her life. Marcus listened, captivated, as Sarah explained how her daughter, now 14, not only walked unaided, but also competed in adaptive swimming and had secured numerous medals in regional competitions. David paid particular heed when Sarah described how her personal experience with adaptive sports had motivated her to specialize in sports physical therapy for children with special needs, transforming personal tragedy into professional expertise that had benefited hundreds of other families. Lisa observed the profound transformation in Sarah's demeanor as she told her story, realizing how the physical therapist had found not only professional purpose, but also emotional catharsis through her work at the foundation. Isabella asks me every night why I dedicate so much time to helping other children when I could be earning significantly more in a private clinic. I always reply that it's because there are thousands of Isabellas worldwide who deserve the same chance she had, Sarah stated, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. If this project can multiply those chances 1,000-fold, then I have no choice but to support it wholeheartedly. My daughter taught me that miracles are possible when the right people refuse to give up, Sarah concluded, briefly embracing Jordan before taking her place beside Marcus. David Kang remained silent for several minutes after Sarah finished her declaration, his gaze fixed on the floor as he wrestled with painful memories he rarely allowed to surface. When he finally began to speak, his voice was low and controlled, yet laden with a grief that everyone in the room could physically feel. David spoke of his son Daniel, a brilliant 16-year-old who had dreamt of becoming an engineer and who had died instantly in a car accident 3 years prior, an event that had utterly shattered the emotional stability and sense of purpose David had meticulously built over decades as an educator. He recounted how he had spent 2 years in a profound depression, unable to return to teaching or connect with young people, until Jordan had personally sought him out and offered him a position at the foundation working with at-risk adolescents. Sarah held her breath as David explained how his first day working with the foundation's youth had been a transformative experience, realizing that every adolescent he helped cultivate discipline and focus through sport was a way to honor Daniel's memory. Marcus watched David with newfound understanding and respect, finally grasping why the former collegiate coach devoted so many extra hours working individually with the program's most challenging youth. Lisa listened with burgeoning admiration as David described how he had discovered a new form of fatherhood through his work, cultivating meaningful relationships with dozens of young people who saw in him a reliable and inspiring paternal figure. Daniel always told me he wanted to use his education to build bridges that would connect communities separated by poverty and prejudice. He never had the chance to realize that dream, but I've found a way to continue building bridges in his name, David said, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. Every young person we manage to lift off the streets and into a university is a bridge Daniel would have been proud to see constructed. If this project can construct 1,000 bridges simultaneously, then that's what Daniel would have wanted me to do, David concluded, joining Marcus and Sarah in their declaration of unconditional support. Lisa Patterson was the last to speak, and when she finally stood before Jordan, her hands trembled slightly as she mentally composed a narrative she rarely shared, even with those closest to her. She began by recounting how her family had literally lost everything during the 2008 financial crisis. The home they had purchased with 2 decades of accumulated savings, the small accounting firm her husband had built from the ground up since his youth, and even the car they relied on for school runs. Lisa recalled the harrowing months they resided in a temporary shelter, as she juggled 3 part-time jobs, endeavoring to amass sufficient funds to secure a modest apartment, while her 2 young children incessantly inquired when they could return home. She detailed how she had discovered the Jordan Foundation's emergency housing program via a social worker, an experimental initiative that offered not merely temporary housing, but also financial counseling and career placement opportunities for families in crisis. Marcus listened with growing astonishment, realizing that Lisa had never previously divulged her personal experience as a beneficiary of the Foundation's programs prior to her employment. Sarah observed Lisa's courage in sharing intimate details about the most challenging period of her life, moments that had clearly left profound imprints on her character and professional approach. David paid particular attention when Lisa described how the Foundation's support had been far more than merely financial, including psychological counseling for the entire family and educational programs that enabled her children to maintain their academic performance even amidst the crisis. When my children ask me why I dedicate so many hours to an organization that offers compensation lower than corporate positions, I show them photographs of our former home and explain that thousands of families are enduring precisely what we experienced, Lisa said, producing a worn photograph from her wallet. This foundation not only afforded us a second chance, it instilled in us the imperative to ensure that other families also receive second chances. If risking everything is the cost of multiplying these opportunities, then it is a price worth paying, Lisa concluded, positioning herself alongside the other 3 team members. Following the 4 heartfelt declarations, the rest of the team likewise voiced their endorsement of the initiative, each individual briefly recounting how the Jordan Foundation had profoundly influenced their personal or professional trajectories. The atmosphere in the room had undergone a complete metamorphosis. What had commenced as a crisis meeting to salvage a failing foundation had transmuted into a strategic planning session aimed at conceiving something with the potential to revolutionize global pediatric sports medicine. Jordan observed his team with a blend of gratitude, pride, and renewed resolve, realizing he had not only underestimated their unwavering loyalty, but also the profound depth of their personal motivations to embrace extraordinary risks. Marcus promptly began reaching out to physicians he had encountered throughout his career in the National Basketball Association, professionals who specialized in elite athlete care and who might be inclined to engage in a groundbreaking endeavor. Sarah opened her laptop and commenced drafting emails to her international network of sports medicine contacts, encompassing physiotherapists and researchers she had met at conferences and exchange programs over the course of her career. David retrieved his phone and initiated messaging former colleagues at universities boasting medical research programs, educators and administrators who could facilitate academic partnerships crucial to the undertaking. Lisa swiftly arranged a shared digital spreadsheet where everyone could input information regarding prospective contacts, thereby establishing a system to meticulously track every conversation, every commitment, and every nascent funding opportunity. Marcus, how many National Basketball Association team physicians do you know personally? We need to commence with individuals who already grasp the paramount importance of elite sports medicine, Jordan inquired, retrieving his own phone to begin making calls. At least 15 whom I know well enough to contact today, and they all know other specialists who have never had the opportunity to work with underserved patients. Marcus replied, already dialing the first number. The secret room Jordan had used for solitary research quickly transformed into a bustling command center, with each team member utilizing different spaces to conduct simultaneous phone conversations, while the central computer displayed the shared spreadsheet that grew by the minute with new contacts and opportunities. Sarah found that several of her international contacts were awake due to favorable time zones, enabling her to conduct real-time conversations with researchers in Europe and Asia who demonstrated immediate interest in the project. David managed to schedule 3 virtual meetings for the following day with university deans who oversaw medical research programs with multi-million-dollar annual budgets. Lisa contacted 5 philanthropic foundations she had met during nonprofit management conferences, discovering that 2 of them had specific mandates to support innovations in pediatric healthcare. Marcus secured preliminary commitments from 3 professional team physicians to participate in a conference call the following day, where they would discuss the project's technical feasibility and potential contributions of expertise. Jordan coordinated all these activities while making his own calls to high-level contacts he had cultivated over decades in professional sports, individuals with sufficient resources and influence to open doors that would typically remain closed. The other 8 team members assumed support roles, organizing information, scheduling meetings, researching contact data, and maintaining detailed records of each interaction. Sarah, did the Zurich researcher you spoke with mention anything about European government funding for innovative medical projects? Lisa asked, organizing information on the shared spreadsheet. Yes, he said there are European Union grant programs specifically for initiatives that combine medical research with global social impact. We might be eligible for at least $20 million in seed funding, Sarah replied, briefly covering the phone. Within a mere 6 hours, the team had established initial contact with over 50 influential individuals in sports medicine, university administration, philanthropy, and social impact investing, forging a network of interests spanning 4 continents. Marcus ascertained that several former professional athletes were actively seeking meaningful avenues to leverage their personal fortunes to generate lasting social impact, and 3 had expressed keen interest in in-person meetings to deliberate potential investment in the endeavor. Sarah secured commitments for technical cooperation from research laboratories across 6 diverse countries, propositions that stood to save millions of dollars in medical protocol development costs. David pinpointed partnership opportunities with universities possessing both the requisite financial resources and academic expertise to scientifically validate the methodologies the proposed center would employ. Lisa unearthed specialized financial instruments tailored for social impact projects of this magnitude, including subsidized interest loans and investment programs offering terms far more advantageous than traditional commercial financing. Jordan realized that in a single day, his team had cultivated a foundation of support and interest that had taken him 3 months to foster on his own, thereby validating his intuition that the project necessitated a collaborative approach to stand any real chance of success. As the evening progressed, the energy in the room surged proportionally to the breakthroughs being achieved, with each successful call generating renewed enthusiasm and impetus for the next conversation. David, does Duke University, which you contacted, have any existing programs we could potentially use as a model for the educational component of our center? Jordan inquired, reviewing the notes he had meticulously compiled throughout the day. Better yet, Michael, they have a pediatric sports medicine pilot program that's been operating for 2 years, but with limited resources. They want to join our project as primary academic partners, David replied, hanging up a call with evident satisfaction. By 2 a.m., 18 hours after commencing work on the project, the team had completely transformed the nature and prospects of the initiative Jordan had single-handedly conceived. The shared spreadsheet contained over 120 strategic contacts, 15 meetings scheduled for the upcoming week, 8 technical partnership proposals, 6 substantial funding opportunities, and 3 investment offers from former professional athletes. Marcus had secured preliminary support from physicians treating athletes across 5 different sports, creating a foundation of expertise that covered virtually all youth sports disciplines. Sarah established connections with researchers working on experimental treatments for other rare conditions, afflicting young athletes, thereby expanding the center's potential scope far beyond exercise-induced hemolysis syndrome. David developed an educational framework that would enable the center to also function as a specialized institution, offering undergraduate and postgraduate programs in pediatric sports medicine. Lisa created a preliminary financial model that demonstrated how the project could be implemented in phases, commencing with $20 million for a pilot clinic and gradually expanding as additional resources became available. Jordan looked around the room, observing his team working with a passion and determination he recalled from his peak athletic performance, yet directed toward an objective far more significant than any athletic victory. He comprehended that his decision to place complete trust in his team had been not only sound, but essential to transforming an impossible vision into a project with genuine prospects of success. Folks, in 18 hours, you've achieved more progress than I did in 3 months working alone. Now I truly understand what it means to collaborate as a team off the court, Jordan said, his voice laden with gratitude and admiration. Michael, this is just the beginning. Tomorrow we will convert these contacts into tangible commitments, and next week we will commence building something the world has never witnessed, Marcus responded, speaking on behalf of the entire team, who persisted in their efforts even after 18 uninterrupted hours. Months after that seminal night, the Jordan Brand Training Center had been repurposed into a round-the-clock medical and logistical operations hub, coordinating what had burgeoned into the largest collaborative pediatric sports medicine initiative in history. Lisa Patterson was at her desk at 5 in the morning, finalizing the intricate details of the protocol that would transport Kevin Williams from Chicago to Baltimore, where Johns Hopkins Hospital had consented to conduct the inaugural experimental treatment of the pilot program the team had devised. Beside her, Sarah Rodriguez meticulously reviewed every medical facet of the transfer, coordinating with the Chicago physicians who had overseen Kevin's care for the preceding months to ensure his condition remained stable throughout transit. Marcus Thompson was on the phone with Kevin's mother, delineating each phase of the process and extending the emotional succor the family required to embark on the most pivotal journey of their lives. David Kang orchestrated the educational provisions for Kevin's stay in Baltimore, ensuring the boy would not fall behind in his studies during treatment and that he would have access to specialized tutors. Jordan observed this meticulous orchestration with a blend of apprehension and pride, cognizant that the triumph or failure of this inaugural case would dictate the trajectory of the entire undertaking, and crucially, the prospects of hundreds of other children worldwide. The other team members navigated the room with military precision, each executing specific functions in what had become the most intricate and perilous operation any of them had orchestrated in their careers. Lisa, have you confirmed the air ambulance will be ready by 2 p.m.? Kevin cannot be without constant medical monitoring for more than 6 hours, Sarah inquired, double-checking the medical protocols. All confirmed, Sarah, and the Johns Hopkins medical team will be awaiting them on the tarmac upon their arrival. We anticipate no delays, Lisa responded, her administrative acumen being put to the ultimate test. The partnership with Johns Hopkins Hospital had culminated in 6 months of intensive negotiations, engagements with administrative boards, presentations to medical ethics committees, and the collaborative development of protocols that synthesized international best practices with bespoke innovations pioneered by Jordan's team. Sarah had personally collaborated with Dr. Robert Chang, one of the world's foremost experts in exercise-induced hemolysis syndrome, to adapt the experimental Swiss treatment to the conditions and resources prevalent in the United States. Marcus had leveraged his connections within the National Basketball Association, NBA, to secure access to physiological monitoring technologies typically reserved for elite professional athletes, equipment that would allow them to track Kevin's treatment response with unparalleled precision. David had coordinated with partner universities to meticulously document the entire process, thereby creating a scientific ledger that could be utilized to replicate the treatment in other hospitals globally. Lisa had managed not only the financial aspects of the treatment, amounting to $2 million, but also the intricate logistics of transportation, accommodation for Kevin's family, and coordination with medical insurers who had initially declined coverage for an experimental procedure. Jordan had used his personal influence to expedite regulatory approvals that typically span years, persuading health authorities that Kevin's case presented an unparalleled opportunity to validate a life-saving treatment for potentially thousands. Johns Hopkins Hospital had designated an entire wing for the project, acknowledging their involvement in an endeavor poised to redefine global standards in pediatric sports medicine. Dr. Chang confirmed that all gene therapy equipment arrived yesterday and has been triple tested. We are technically prepared for what may be the most advanced treatment ever administered to a child, Sarah stated, ending a call with Baltimore. Sarah, my paramount concern isn't the technology. It's what transpires if something goes awry and Kevin doesn't respond as we anticipate, confessed Jordan, voicing the trepidation shared by all. On the morning of the transfer, Kevin Williams arrived at the Jordan Brand Training Center, accompanied by his mother, Carmen Williams, and Maria Santos, the Chicago coordinator who had made the pivotal call 6 months prior that altered everything. Despite being only 12 years old, Kevin exhibited remarkable maturity, grasping that he was on the cusp of becoming the inaugural patient of a treatment poised to revolutionize medicine for young athletes like himself. Carmen clutched her son's hand with visible intensity, her eyes betraying the conflict between hope and terror that any mother would feel in trusting her child to an experimental procedure. Maria documented every moment with a camera, recognizing that they were experiencing a historic juncture that needed to be preserved to inspire other families confronting similar predicaments. Jordan knelt to meet Kevin at eye level, looking directly into his eyes as he reiterated what would transpire over the next 3 days in Baltimore. Marcus showed Kevin the monitoring equipment he would wear, elucidating how professional athletes utilize similar technology to optimize their performances. Sarah demonstrated some of the rehabilitation exercises Kevin would undertake during the treatment, activities designed to fortify his body while the gene therapy rectified the life-threatening condition. David presented the educational plan that would enable Kevin to continue his studies throughout the treatment, ensuring he would not forfeit academic progress while battling for his life. Lisa coordinated the entire logistics of the transfer, ensuring that every detail had been meticulously planned and that no unforeseen complications would arise during an already sufficiently stressful journey. Mr. Jordan, my mother said you sold your stake in the basketball team to fund my treatment. Why would you do that for someone you barely know? Kevin inquired, his question betraying a wisdom beyond his years. Kevin, I did it because you reminded me of myself at your age, and because I believe you will leverage this second chance to aid countless other children in the future, Jordan responded, his voice laden with genuine emotion. The flight to Baltimore was accompanied by a specialized medical team that continuously monitored Kevin's vital signs, ensuring the journey would not exacerbate his condition prior to the commencement of treatment. Sarah was transported via air ambulance, maintaining constant communication with the Johns Hopkins physicians and updating the Charlotte team on every aspect of the journey. Marcus, David, and Lisa remained at the training facility, coordinating support operations and maintaining contact with the scores of physicians, researchers, and supporters anxiously following the case's progression. Jordan flew in his private jet, arriving in Baltimore 2 hours ahead of Kevin to personally meet with Dr. Chang and review all treatment protocols one last time. At Johns Hopkins Hospital, a team of 15 specialists had been preparing for weeks to receive Kevin, meticulously studying his specific case and adapting equipment to his unique needs. The wing designated for the treatment had been transformed into a cutting-edge medical laboratory, combining gene therapy equipment with physical rehabilitation facilities that would enable Kevin to be simultaneously monitored and strengthened. Medical cameras would document every moment of the treatment, creating a scientific record that would be studied by researchers worldwide. Specialty media outlets had been alerted that something revolutionary was unfolding, though specific details were kept confidential to protect Kevin's and his family's privacy. Dr. Chang, what is your candid assessment of the chances of success? We need to be prepared for any outcome, Jordan inquired during the final meeting with the medical team. Michael, based on the data we have, Kevin has an 80% chance of a positive response. But this treatment is so groundbreaking that we are literally writing new medicine, Dr. Chang replied with scientific candor. The first day of treatment commenced at 6 o'clock in the morning, with Kevin being prepared to receive the initial phase of gene therapy. a process involving the introduction of genetic vectors specifically engineered to correct the enzymatic deficiency causing exercise-induced hemolysis syndrome. Sarah remained by Kevin's side throughout the entire procedure, explaining each step in language he could comprehend and offering unwavering emotional support. Jordan watched through a surgical suite window, his hands pressed against the glass as he observed the boy who had touched his heart receiving a treatment that could determine whether he would live or die. Marcus, David, and Lisa monitored the proceedings remotely via video conference from the training center, maintaining constant communication with other team members and the families of other children anxiously awaiting the outcome of this initial trial. Dr. Chang and his team worked with surgical precision, introducing the genetic modifications through techniques specifically developed for this case. Carmen Williams remained in the waiting room, silently praying as she received regular updates on her son's progress. Maria Santos documented every historic moment, understanding that she was witnessing something that could forever alter the treatment of young athletes with rare conditions. Medical monitors indicated that Kevin was responding positively to the initial stages of the treatment, his vital signs remaining stable as his body began to process the life-saving genetic modifications. Kevin is tolerating the gene therapy better than any patient we've ever treated. His enzymatic markers are responding precisely as anticipated, Dr. Chung reported after 6 hours into the procedure. Doctor, does this mean he'll be cured? That he'll be able to play basketball again? Carmen asked, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and trepidation. The second day of treatment focused on integrating the genetic modifications with a specialized physical conditioning program, a revolutionary approach never before attempted in pediatric sports medicine. Kevin was placed on a regimen of low-intensity exercises while medical monitors tracked how his modified body responded to controlled physical stress. Sarah coordinated the physiotherapy aspects of the program, adapting exercises she had developed over years of working with young athletes to Kevin's specific needs. Marcus contributed his expertise as an elite athlete, suggesting modifications to the exercises that would maximize physical benefits while minimizing risks. David sustained Kevin's motivation and focus throughout the exercises, employing psychological techniques he had honed over decades as a coach and educator. Jordan meticulously observed Kevin's every movement, seeking indications that the treatment was proving efficacious and that the boy was gaining strength rather than deteriorating. Dr. Chang constantly monitored biomedical data, adjusting protocols in real time as Kevin's body responded to the combined therapy. Lisa orchestrated all scientific documentation of the process, ensuring every facet of the therapeutic regimen was meticulously recorded to facilitate future replication. Carmen remained in close proximity during all exercises, offering encouragement to Kevin and serving as an unwavering fount of emotional fortitude. Maria Santos observed with burgeoning hope as Kevin evinced levels of energy and strength he had not displayed in months. Medical monitors displayed consistent improvements in markers indicative of treatment efficacy, suggesting that the synergy of gene therapy and physical conditioning was yielding superior outcomes compared to either treatment administered in isolation. Kevin, how do you feel? Do you perceive any changes in your physique since yesterday? Sarah inquired during a respite from the exercises. Dr. Sarah, I feel as though an electric current is coursing through my entire body. It's as if I'm more robust than I have ever been, Kevin responded, his ebullience palpable despite the rigors of the treatment. The third and final day of the therapeutic regimen was dedicated to extensive diagnostic evaluations to ascertain if Kevin had fully responded to the experimental protocol and whether he could safely resume the strenuous physical activities he so cherished. A battery of blood tests confirmed that the enzymatic markers associated with hemolysis syndrome had been entirely rectified, indicating that Kevin's body now produced the requisite enzymes to adequately process intense physical exertion. Controlled stress tests revealed that Kevin had not only regained his former physical capacity, but was also exhibiting levels of strength and endurance surpassing what he had displayed prior to the disease's diagnosis. Sarah conducted physiotherapy evaluations that confirmed all of Kevin's bodily systems were functioning at optimal levels, with no indications of weakness or instability that might suggest treatment side effects. Marcus worked directly with Kevin on adapted basketball drills, observing that the boy exhibited coordination, speed, and strength that astonished even the most optimistic physicians. David documented Kevin's emotional and psychological responses to the treatment, noting how the physical improvement had culminated in renewed confidence and a zest for life. Jordan personally participated in the final evaluations, playing a brief one-on-one game with Kevin, which unequivocally demonstrated that the boy had not only survived the treatment, but had emerged as a stronger, more capable athlete. Dr. Chang and his team reviewed all data meticulously gathered over the 3 days, confirming the treatment's unqualified success in Kevin's official recovery from the life-threatening syndrome. Carmen wept tears of joy upon receiving confirmation that her son was completely healthy and could resume playing basketball without any health risks. Maria Santos documented the historic moment Kevin received official medical clearance to return to athletic activities, a moment that symbolized hope for hundreds of other families facing similar predicaments. Dr. Chang, what exactly does this signify? Is Kevin truly cured? Can he pursue professional basketball in the future? Jordan inquired, still processing the magnitude of this achievement. Michael, Kevin is not merely cured. He is stronger than he was before the illness. More importantly, we now possess the knowledge to replicate this protocol for other children worldwide. Dr. Chang responded, his scientific gratification palpable. Upon his hospital discharge, Kevin Williams approached Jordan with a resolve that astonished everyone present, his words revealing a maturity and perspective that had blossomed throughout his arduous journey through illness and recovery. He looked directly into Jordan's eyes, his voice steady despite his youth, as he articulated gratitude far exceeding what might be anticipated from a 12-year-old. Kevin elucidated how he had come to understand throughout his treatment that his journey was not solely about his personal recovery, but about paving the way for other children worldwide grappling with similar challenges. He recounted how he had contemplated, during the most arduous phases of his treatment, all the other young athletes who stood to benefit from the protocol being trialed within his own body. Sarah listened, tears welling in her eyes as Kevin articulated his resolve to leverage his second chance at life, not merely to become a superior athlete, but a beacon of inspiration and assistance for other young individuals facing adversity. Marcus observed with profound pride as Kevin evinced a caliber of leadership and character that typically requires years to cultivate in professional athletes. David recognized in Kevin the emotional maturity and sense of purpose he strove to foster in all the young people he mentored. Lisa meticulously documented Kevin's words, understanding implicitly that they would become an integral part of the project's official narrative and serve as potent inspiration for future fundraising endeavors. Carmen gazed at her son with a blend of pride and astonishment, perceiving how the ordeal had transmuted Kevin into a more profound and contemplative individual. Maria Santos recorded every word, fully cognizant that Kevin's declaration would stand as a powerful testament for other families contemplating similar treatments. Jordan listened with escalating emotion, recognizing that Kevin had articulated a truth he himself was only just beginning to grasp regarding the profound essence of leadership and societal impact. Mr. Jordan, you not only saved my life, you instilled in me the hope that I can assist other boys like myself. Now I understand that my purpose extends beyond simply playing basketball. It is to leverage basketball to inspire children who believe they have no hope, Kevin declared, his words resonating through the room in respectful silence. Kevin, you have just imparted a lesson to me that took 50 years to fully comprehend. The true miracle was not your medical treatment. It was the realization that when we place our trust in the right individuals, we can achieve the impossible together, Jordan responded, embracing the young man who had not only transformed his own life, but also Jordan's entire perspective on leadership and teamwork. During the flight back to Charlotte, Jordan reflected on the lessons he had gleaned over the past 6 months, realizing that his initial attempt to shoulder the burden of saving Kevin alone had been not only superfluous but counterproductive. He gazed out the airplane window as he processed how his decision to place complete trust in his team had led to achievements that would have been unattainable through individual exertion, no matter how determined or well-intentioned. Sarah reviewed the medical protocols that would now be disseminated to hospitals worldwide, protocols that had been meticulously developed through the collaboration of dozens of specialists her team had managed to enlist. Marcus perused the contact list they had compiled during the project, acknowledging that they now possessed an international support network capable of facilitating treatments for hundreds of other children. David organized the educational documentation that would enable other educators and trainers to identify early indicators of the syndrome in young athletes under their purview. Lisa quantified how the successful treatment of Kevin had unequivocally validated the financial model of the Pediatric Sports Medicine Center, attracting considerable interest from investors who had previously deemed the project too precarious. They all comprehended that they had been instrumental in something historic, not merely the successful treatment of one child, but the genesis of a collaborative model that could be replicated to address other intricate medical challenges. Jordan recognized that his paramount achievement had not been merely funding Kevin's treatment, but learning to lead through trust and collaboration instead of attempting to micromanage every facet of a project single-handedly. The experience had transmuted not only Kevin's life, but the entire team's comprehension of what was achievable when dedicated individuals converged on a common objective that transcended personal interests. Marcus, do you grasp how we accomplished in 6 months what I believed would take years to achieve? And all because I ceased attempting to undertake everything independently, Jordan remarked, his voice betraying genuine humility. Michael, you were always the quintessential team player on the courts. Now you've finally mastered applying that in real life. Kevin wasn't the sole individual to have undergone healing in recent months, Marcus responded, acknowledging the profound personal transformation Jordan had experienced throughout the project. A year following Kevin Williams's miraculous treatment, Michael Jordan stood before the most formidable architectural complex he had ever helped bring into existence. The Jordan Center for Pediatric Sports Medicine, a striking glass and steel edifice that rose majestically in Charlotte, emblematic of an impossible vision's transformation into tangible reality. Kevin Williams, now 13 years old and conspicuously taller and stronger, positioned himself alongside Jordan, clutching the golden ribbon destined to be severed, officially inaugurating the world's inaugural center dedicated exclusively to the treatment of young athletes afflicted with rare medical conditions. Hundreds of individuals thronged the complex, expansive parking area, among them families of children who had received treatment over the preceding year. Medical practitioners from scores of nations present to scrutinize the revolutionary protocols devised by the team. Representatives from the international media meticulously documenting what had unequivocally become a landmark in pediatric sports medicine, and former professional athletes whose philanthropic endeavors had been galvanized by the project. Marcus Thompson orchestrated the event's logistics with the military precision he had cultivated over the past year through coordinating international treatments. Sarah Rodriguez meticulously oversaw the ceremony's medical facets, ensuring that recovering patients could safely partake. David Kang coordinated the educational components of the event, designed to inspire future generations of sports medicine professionals, and Lisa Patterson adeptly managed the administrative and financial intricacies of an inauguration being broadcast live to 40 distinct countries. The ambient energy was palpable, an effervescent blend of celebration, profound gratitude, and eager anticipation for the transformative future impact the center was poised to exert on the lives of thousands of young athletes across the globe. Mr. Jordan, are you apprehensive? This inauguration will transform the lives of countless children who are not even aware of our existence yet, Kevin inquired, showcasing the remarkable maturity he had cultivated throughout his arduous journey of treatment and recovery. Kevin, I am more profoundly moved than nervous. As I gaze upon this center, I envision all the children whose lives we will save in the coming years, all thanks to your courage in being the first, Jordan responded, placing a hand on the shoulder of the young man who had become a global beacon of hope. During the inaugural ceremony, Jordan presented compelling statistics that underscored the revolutionary impact the center had achieved within a mere 12 months of operation. 150 children from 30 diverse nations had received complementary treatment, 92% of whom had achieved full recovery, and 87% had successfully resumed athletic endeavors at levels commensurate with or surpassing their pre-illness capabilities. Sarah elucidated for the audience how the meticulously developed protocols at the center were being disseminated gratuitously to hospitals across 6 continents, thereby forging a global treatment network that exponentially magnified the project's original scope. Marcus delineated how professional athletes spanning dozens of different sports had contributed not merely financially, but also by providing invaluable mentorship and inspiration to young patients throughout their rigorous treatment regimens. David unveiled educational programs that the center had pioneered to train physicians, physical therapists, and athletic trainers in the early identification and comprehensive treatment of rare conditions prevalent among young athletes. Programs that had already graduated over 500 specialized professionals. Lisa disclosed that the center had achieved financial self-sustainability through an innovative amalgamation of philanthropic donations, governmental partnerships, sponsored research initiatives, and private patient treatments that entirely subsidized complementary care for underprivileged families. Jordan expounded on how the Jordan brand had become the inaugural sports enterprise globally to establish its own dedicated medical division, thereby setting a precedent that was already being emulated by other prominent brands within the sports industry. Kevin shared his personal transformation story, detailing how he had not only made a full recovery, but also become an ambassador for other children facing similar diagnoses, offering hope and inspiration during times of fear and uncertainty. Dr. Chang, how many children do you estimate we will be able to treat in the next 5 years using the protocols we've developed here? Sarah inquired during her presentation on the medical advancements achieved. Sarah, based on the international interest we've garnered, I believe we can realistically treat over 1,000 children annually by 2030. We are literally saving an entire generation of young athletes. Dr. Chung responded, his scientific satisfaction evident to the international audience. The most poignant part of the ceremony was when Jordan officially announced the alteration of the historic Jordan brand motto, replacing the iconic "Be Like Mike" with "Stronger Together," a transformation that symbolized not only Jordan's personal evolution as a leader, but also a new corporate philosophy rooted in collaboration and collective social impact. He elaborated on how the phrase, "I can't do this anymore," had become an international emblem that recognizing personal limitations and seeking assistance represented genuine strength, not weakness, inspiring mental health campaigns across various sports organizations worldwide. Marcus shared how dozens of former professional athletes had reached out over the past year, expressing interest in establishing similar initiatives in their own communities, thereby igniting a revolution in sports philanthropy that was reshaping how millionaire athletes perceived their social responsibilities. Sarah detailed the invitation she had received to present the center's protocols at international medical conferences, opportunities that were setting new global benchmarks for pediatric sports medicine. David reported how universities were formulating new curricula based on the educational methodologies developed at the center, thereby cultivating a new generation of professionals specializing in working with young athletes. Lisa presented financial data illustrating how the center's sustainability model was being studied and replicated by philanthropic organizations in other sectors, thereby establishing a new paradigm for large-scale social impact projects. Jordan publicly acknowledged that his greatest personal lesson had been discovering that true leadership was not about individual invincibility, but about forging invincible teams through trust, collaboration, and shared purpose. Kevin concluded his own presentation by explaining how he planned to leverage his experience and platform to inspire other children, not only those with medical conditions, but any young person confronting seemingly insurmountable challenges. Mr. Jordan, do you truly believe that we have fundamentally altered how the world approaches young athletes with illnesses? That we have made a lasting difference? Kevin asked during a private moment between the official presentations. Kevin, we haven't merely revolutionized medical treatment. We have demonstrated that when the right individuals unite for a cause greater than themselves, miracles cease to be impossible and become inevitable, Jordan responded, his absolute conviction reverberating through the room. During a panel discussion featuring physicians, former athletes, and beneficiary families, Jordan publicly reflected on how his understanding of legacy had been utterly transformed by the Medical Center Project. He confessed that for decades he had believed his 6 National Basketball League titles represented the pinnacle of his personal achievements and the most significant legacy he would leave to the world. Marcus contributed to the discussion by explaining how he had observed Jordan evolve from a leader who inspired through individual example, to someone who empowered others to achieve collective greatness. Sarah shared medical observations on how the collaborative environment fostered by the team had yielded therapeutic innovations that would have been unattainable through traditional individual or institutional research. David described how the educational methodologies developed during the project were being applied in contexts far beyond sports medicine, influencing youth development programs across various sectors. Lisa presented financial analyses demonstrating how the sustainability model crafted for the center was enabling continuous expansion without reliance on external donations, ensuring the project's longevity and organic growth. Jordan explained how he had discovered that true impact did not stem from personal accomplishments, but from establishing systems and opportunities that enabled others to realize their full potential. Kevin participated in the panel as a representative of the young beneficiaries, articulating with striking eloquence how the experience had taught him and other children that perceived limitations can be transformed into opportunities for growth and service to others. Carmen Williams, Kevin's mother, shared the family's perspective on how the treatment had reshaped not only her son's health, but the entire dynamic and aspirations of their family. Mariah Santos, the Chicago coordinator who had facilitated the original connection, described how she had witnessed the evolution from an individual crisis into a systemic revolution that was now benefiting thousands of families globally. Marcus, when you reflect on all we've achieved, what was the moment you realized we were creating something historic? Jordan inquired during the panel, publicly acknowledging his team's pivotal contributions. Michael, it was when I realized I stopped working for you and started working with you. The moment we became true partners instead of employees was when I knew something special was unfolding, Marcus responded, his words receiving resounding applause from the audience. The ceremony culminated in Kevin Williams officially cutting the inaugural ribbon alongside Jordan, a symbolic gesture that represented not merely the opening of a medical center, but the dawn of a new epoch in global pediatric sports medicine. Photographers from international media outlets captured the historic moment, images that would be disseminated worldwide and become iconic in their portrayal of how medical innovation and sports philanthropy could coalesce to forge transformative societal impact. Following the ribbon cutting, Kevin led Jordan and other dignitaries on a guided tour of the center's facilities, explaining with profound expertise how each area had been meticulously designed to maximize both medical efficacy and emotional solace for young patients and their families. The visit encompassed research laboratories where scientists from diverse nations collaborated on developing novel treatments, therapy rooms equipped with cutting-edge technology that seamlessly integrated traditional medicine with innovative methodologies, inpatient accommodations meticulously designed to cater to the unique psychological needs of young athletes during treatment, and purpose-built athletic facilities enabling progressive rehabilitation within a supportive and encouraging environment. Jordan surveyed each detail with a palpable sense of paternal pride, recognizing how the nascent vision he had conceived in solitude had been brought to fruition through the concerted efforts of scores of specialized professionals. Sarah drew attention to the technical specifications of the medical equipment for interested visitors, explaining how innovations pioneered at the center were setting new global benchmarks for pediatric sports medicine. Marcus engaged with the attending families, sharing narratives of hope and remarkable recovery that underscored the profound human impact of their ongoing work. David showcased educational suites where young patients could continue their studies during treatment, ensuring their academic progression was not hindered by their medical conditions. Lisa presented pioneering logistical frameworks that allowed for the seamless coordination of international treatments, thereby facilitating access for families from any part of the world, irrespective of their financial circumstances. Kevin, could you explain to our visitors how it feels to know that hundreds of other children will be afforded the same opportunity you had? Jordan inquired as they ambled through the center's athletic facilities. Mr. Jordan, it's as if I've won the most pivotal championship of my life. But instead of it being solely my trophy, I get to share this victory with all these children forevermore. Kevin responded, his athletic analogy resonating profoundly with everyone present. At the culmination of the inauguration ceremony, Jordan offered a final reflection that encapsulated the transformative journey, which had commenced with a desperate call concerning a gravely ill boy and culminated in the establishment of an institution that was redefining possibilities for young athletes globally. Jordan acknowledged that he had discovered a form of leadership more potent than anything he had experienced throughout his athletic career: the capacity to inspire others to transcend their own perceived limitations in service of a cause greater than individual gain. Marcus, Sarah, David, and Lisa were invited to the stage to receive public recognition for their pivotal contributions, each briefly expounding on how the project had transformed not merely their professional trajectories, but their understanding of life's purpose and social responsibility. Kevin was introduced as the center's official ambassador, a position he embraced with a seriousness remarkable for his age, committing to leverage his platform to inspire other children facing medical or social challenges. Jordan concluded his remarks by revealing that he had come to realize that his 6 National Basketball League titles, though significant in their time, were ephemeral achievements compared to the lasting impact they could have by saving lives and establishing systems that would continue to benefit future generations long after his own demise. Folks, when I embarked on this journey, I believed my greatest legacy would be those 6 National Basketball League championships. I was profoundly mistaken. My greatest legacy lies in the lives we've saved by working as a team, Jordan stated, his voice imbued with emotion and conviction. Michael, you've taught us that true champions are not those who triumph in isolation, but rather those who cultivate opportunities for others to prevail as well. This center stands as a testament to the fact that together we are indeed stronger, Sarah responded, speaking on behalf of the entire team who had transformed an impossible vision into the most meaningful reality of their lives. If the journey of Michael Jordan and Kevin Williams truly struck a chord with you, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and unearth the next compelling narrative we've meticulously crafted for you. Stay tuned. And before you sign off, please let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and tell us, what did you make of the denouement of this tale?